like, this might be a really great way to get that security, that stability, that home. And I didn't really get it. It was like, why would you build or buy a tiny house when like that money could go into a down payment for a proper sized house? Like, is not just basically an RV. Like, I just didn't understand it. Forward. And as I was thinking to myself last year, I was just like, I feel as though I'm about to be wrapping up a few things in my life and moving into a new direction. And I didn't want to have the cost of rent and a mortgage, because I also part own a place in Canada, hanging over my head. I wanted to greatly reduce my expenses. I wanted to have a bit more freedom. I also just didn't want to be paying someone else's mortgage anymore, really, and that, or investment. The cost of my rent in Australia was $2,000 a month, and I just didn't want to do it anymore. I also recognized that I don't like to live with people I don't know, like people who aren't family. So if I haven't lived with family, I've lived on my own, and yeah. I was like, okay, what do I need to do to greatly reduce my expenses, but also still have a really beautiful and safe place to live? And so we got brainstorming, and I'm just like, I remember this idea of a tiny house. And I started to look back into it again, and then like watch Tiny House Nation on Netflix and like all these different things. Started to see that the tiny house movement was starting to become a thing here in Australia. And I was like, this might be a really great way to get that security, that stability, that home, without paying for the cost of it, type of thing, like for the high cost of it. And so I looked into it more, and I was just like, I knew that I was going to be leaving my job that I was in and had been in for on and off for 8 years, and I needed to put things in motion to make it happen, to make the tiny house happen, if that was the route that I was going to go down. So I started researching, I started looking at tiny houses, I visited builders to maybe get them to build it, and like all these things, came up with a plan. We came up with a plan, and got the funds for it, and basically January, started to get it all going and all built. So got plans drawn up, got the trailer ordered, got the frames ordered, like the works, and left my job in February. And then COVID happened. I was due to go back to Canada for 4 to 6 months.
Try to ride a lift by yourself.
And I felt really good because it was like, okay, I've like gotten rid of that expense. I've got this tiny house that's gonna get built. It's gonna be great. And then COVID happened, and in that moment, I was like, fuck, I am so glad that I ditched the apartment. I ended up getting a contract position when I went back home to Canada, and then got laid off of that from COVID. And I didn't have to worry. And it felt so good. And I was like, this is great. This is exactly what I wanted. This is exactly the plan. It was like, if I got laid off, lost a job, whatever the case was, that I didn't have to worry about coming up with $2,000 a month or all these things to help pay for life and whatnot. And yeah, so, but the long-term vision has been to have land in on the Gold Coast hinterland here in Australia, chickens and pigs and horses and all the wonderful things. And whether we put another tiny house on it and connect them as some people do, or we'd also discuss the idea of like we would actually eventually put a house with foundations on the land, and then the tiny house could be an Airbnb or a long-term rental. I think I've just seen too that and I'm starting to like read a bit more too, women in their 50s, 60s who don't have affordable housing. They have not been able to, or they haven't worked because they've had kids or whatever the case is. They don't have like the retirement funds necessarily, like whatever the case is. And there's things happening where women just don't have like a stable home, security, that kind of thing, their home of their own for whatever reason. And what they're finding is that tiny houses on wheels are this great alternative because they're affordable. A lot of women are getting them because of that, and because then they've got this house. And anyway, so I also then looked at my future of just like, well, should my partner and I ever split or anything like that? I never wanted to be in a position where I didn't have a home. I also saw the tiny as that, as an option in that way, that there would always be a home if I ever needed it. For women in particular, I like highly recommend a tiny house on wheels, even if it's just as an investment for now. It's just an option.
That's basically how it'll, rather than cutting a 45 degree on it, that's how it'll come up.